Hello, guys, back again with Admin here. I hope wherever you are, you're always in good health. Okay, in today's video, I'm going to tell you in detail about a new movie titled Nosferatu, released in 2024. Previously, I briefly discussed this movie, guys. But this time, I'm going to narrate it in full detail. Nosferatu is a remake of the 1920 silent film Nosferatu by F.W. Murnau. The film stars several famous Hollywood actors. The story centers around the ancient vampire Count Orlok's obsession with Ellen Hutter, the wife of real estate agent Thomas Hutter. This obsession brings terror and plague to the town of Wismar, Germany, in 1838. Okay, guys, before continuing, it's best to use your headphones to enhance the horror atmosphere. The scene begins with a story about Ellen, who has experienced supernatural disturbances since childhood. These disturbances occur not only in reality, but also frequently appear in her dreams. During each disturbance, Ellen endlessly prays to anyone who can hear her prayers, even to the devil, begging not to be disturbed. On a quiet night, a whispering voice says, "Come to me." The voice draws Ellen to approach a window in her room. There she sees a dark shadow slowly approaching her, an ancient entity with extraordinary power. It offers her an immortal life filled with pleasures, order, and authority, but with one condition: Ellen must be willing to become part of that darkness. Asked to swear to accept the offer, Ellen, hesitant but tempted by the promises, finally agrees and makes her vow, becoming part of a darkness she does not fully understand. Several years later, the story shifts to Ellen, who has married her beloved Thomas Hutter. That morning, Ellen awakens with overwhelming fear. The nightmares that once haunted her and had disappeared now return. Thomas tries to calm Ellen with a warm embrace, hoping to make his wife feel more at ease. At that time, they are enjoying their honeymoon. After ensuring Ellen feels better, Thomas begins preparing to go to work. That morning, Thomas returns to his office for his first day back after the honeymoon. Upon arrival, a new task awaits. His boss, Knock, asks Thomas to go to Transylvania to handle the sale of the property. Knock explains that Thomas will meet someone named Mr. Orlok there. It is said that Mr. Orlok intends to buy a property in Wismar. This is a golden opportunity for the company, as Mr. Orlok is willing to pay a very high price. Additionally, it is also a great opportunity for Thomas to earn a significant reward. However, Thomas feels strange because Knock offers a manor that is already in ruins. The manor is no longer fit for human habitation. Knock himself does not provide much explanation about this. He only follows Mr. Orlok's request, as he believes the most important thing is the very lucrative price offered. Therefore, Knock asks Thomas to depart immediately to meet Mr. Orlok, the sooner the better. Thomas then informs Ellen about it. The journey from Wismar to Transylvania will take 6 weeks. This task is crucial for Thomas. Besides receiving a large paycheck, it will also solidify his career in the company. However, Ellen does not permit it. She pleads with Thomas not to go, having a bad feeling about his journey there. All these forebodings stem from the nightmares she has been experiencing recently. Ellen cannot imagine how terrifying these dreams are. However, no matter what, the decision has been made. Thomas can no longer cancel his trip to Transylvania. He tries to convince Ellen that everything will be alright and that what concerns her is just a mere nightmare. Before leaving, Thomas says goodbye to his friend, Patrick, and Anna, Ellen's sibling. Thomas asks both to look after Ellen while he is away. Meanwhile, in another place, Knock, Thomas's boss, turns out to be a devil worshipper. He is seen performing rituals and stating that he has obeyed all the devil's requests. The next morning, Thomas sets off. After a long journey, Thomas arrives at a remote village. Being educated and from the city, Thomas is warmly welcomed by the local villagers. There, he is approached by someone inquiring about his intentions for coming to the village. Thomas explains that he intends to meet someone at Orlok's castle, which might not be far from this village. However, the person reacts with anger and threatens Thomas not to mention that name carelessly. The villagers warn Thomas not to go there as the place is cursed. Being educated and from the city, Thomas does not believe in such things. His arrival is solely for work without any other intention. Although the villagers try to dissuade and frighten him, Thomas remains steadfast in his intention to meet Orlok. After resting overnight in the village, the next morning Thomas continues his journey to Orlok's castle. The steep and snowy trail makes it impossible to bring a horse. Therefore, he must proceed on foot. It begins to get dark, but Thomas has not yet arrived at the castle. En route, from a distance, he sees a horse-drawn carriage approaching. Oddly, there is no driver steering the carriage. It stops in front of him, inviting Thomas to board. Overridden by doubt and fear, Thomas finally decides to board the carriage. As the journey towards the castle proceeds, a sense of unease begins to envelop Thomas. The closer he gets to the castle, the darker and more eerie the atmosphere becomes. Upon arrival at the castle, Thomas is greeted by a tall, large figure clad in a black robe. Feeling doubt and fear overcome him, Thomas temporarily convinces himself to proceed. He has accepted this task, and there is no turning back. With a deep and cold voice, the figure begins speaking. He introduces himself as Orlok and states that only the two of them are at the place. Orlok immediately requests Thomas to hand over the property sales agreement document. At that moment, Thomas feels an overwhelming fear in his heart. He regrets not heeding the villagers' warnings about the castle. Yet, he remains professional, endeavoring to complete his task calmly. Orlok explains that he wishes to move to Wismar to start a new, more modern life like the one Thomas currently lives. However, the longer Thomas stays at the castle, the more the atmosphere weighs him down in deep fear. The horror peaks when Orlok suddenly moves to a different spot very quickly. Slowly, Orlok approaches Thomas with a piercing gaze, seemingly ready to attack him. In the morning, Thomas awakens to find himself asleep on the castle floor. He has no recollection of what happened the previous night. While trying to make sense of his situation, he sees a mirror reflection and discovers bite marks on his chest that are incredibly painful. Thomas is confused and afraid, not knowing what actually transpired. That night, the property purchase agreement is finalized. Orlok notices the locket Thomas is wearing and asks to see it more closely. With whatever strength he has left, he finally manages to leap into a river flowing beneath the castle. Upon opening the locket, Orlok finds Ellen's photo inside. Orlok's expression changes, as if a new passion ignites within him. After realizing that Ellen is Thomas's wife, Orlok then requests Thomas to sign the property purchase document. However, unbeknownst to Thomas, this signature is a trap that symbolically gives Ellen to Orlok. Obliviously signing it, Thomas is unaware of the hidden intention behind the document. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, Thomas attempts to bid farewell and wishes to leave, but Orlok refuses even to take the locket. Fear begins to haunt Thomas. He resolves to escape the castle. But all the doors are tightly locked until finally, Thomas finds an open door. The door leads to a dark room containing a coffin. Upon opening the coffin, Thomas is shocked to find Orlok's corpse inside. He finally realizes Orlok is not human. Thomas tries to destroy Orlok's corpse, but suddenly Orlok awakens and starts pursuing him. Thomas runs and hides in one of the chambers. Meanwhile, Orlok gazes at Ellen's photo in the locket and begins fixating on Ellen from afar, as if observing her through another dimension. There is no safe place for Thomas within the castle. Orlok once again approaches and drains Thomas's blood. Fortunately, Thomas survives. Meanwhile, Ellen, experiencing disturbances from Orlok, exhibits bizarre behavior as if possessed. In Thomas's case, he is found by nuns at the riverbank. The nuns attempt to treat Thomas's wounds, but soon realize Thomas has been bitten by a vampire. Through the nuns, we also learn, guys, that Orlok was once a sorcerer resurrected after his death to become a terrifying vampire figure. They also warn Thomas that Orlok's bite keeps him under the vampire's shadowy control. Although the nuns are willing to help Thomas recover, Thomas feels he has no more time. He must return to Wismar immediately to see Ellen, knowing Orlok is on the way to the city. Thomas also realizes that Orlok desires Ellen. Orlok begins his journey to Wismar on board a freight ship. The crew is unaware they are carrying a ferocious vampire capable of hunting them at any moment. Additionally, Orlok spreads a deadly plague aboard, affecting the crew one by one. In Wismar, Ellen's condition continues to deteriorate and becomes unstable. Dr. Jekyll and Professor Fritz try to handle Ellen's situation. Initially, Fritz does not believe possession is real, considering it to be a delusion. However, Ellen's case is different. Fritz senses something strange and evil residing within Ellen. When Fritz attempts to exorcise the evil spirit from Ellen's body, she reacts in a terrifying manner. Her voice changes to one that is not her own, issuing threats that they will soon perish. The situation becomes increasingly tense, but for now, Ellen remains controlled. Fritz is determined to find another way to cure Ellen before it's too late. Meanwhile, Nock manages to escape from the hospital where he is confined. He is aware that Mr. Orlok will arrive soon and feels he must greet and escort Orlok to his destination. Thomas finally arrives home, albeit in a very weakened state. Curiously, Ellen's condition suddenly improves after Thomas's return. Anna and Patrick are puzzled, suspecting Ellen's illness might be due to deep longing for Thomas, who had been out of touch for weeks. On the other hand, dock workers in Vismar are shocked by the discovery of a wrecked, stranded ship. From the ship, thousands of rats emerge, spreading fear. The workers also find mangled corpses, confirming the ship carried a deadly plague. Nock, having transported Orlok's coffin to a hidden location, appears increasingly confident in his mission. As we suspected, guys, Nock is Orlok's operative. Orlok begins threatening the town of Vismar. From the corpses found on the ship, Dr. Jekyll and Professor Fritz find anomalies. The bodies are bloodless, raising serious questions about what creature could drain human blood so rapidly. They also learn of Nock's escape, noting he had gruesomely murdered several guards. Fritz begins to realize that these events appear predetermined. He connects all these events to the terrifying creature known as the vampire Nosferatu. Meanwhile, at home, the disturbances revisit Ellen. Unknowingly, Ellen is drawn by whispering summons. There, Ellen meets Orlok. From their conversation, it is revealed, guys, that Ellen has a past connection with Orlok. Long ago, Ellen swore to accept Orlok as her protector and lover. After years of separation, they meet again, and Orlok declares this meeting as their destined fate. Orlok also reveals that Thomas, Ellen's husband, had agreed to give Ellen to him by signing the agreement document. In other words, their marriage now officially holds no bond. Orlok states that Ellen must now devote herself to him. However, Ellen continues to refuse, knowing Orlok purposely trapped Thomas into signing the agreement. But Orlok did not care. He said that the only option for Ellen now was to surrender voluntarily, but Elon refused. Elon's refusal made Orlok furious. He promised that in 3 nights, he would make Elon suffer by destroying those closest to him. And the horror happened immediately. That night, the child who slept with him was found gnawed by rats. The next day, Wishbrook was shocked by the number of people who died from the disease outbreak. After lying bedridden for several days, Thomas finally recovered. He immediately remembered that a threat was terrorizing Wishbrook and also Ellen. Thomas then urged Ellen to leave Wishbrook immediately, but Ellen herself was already aware of the threat. Here, Ellen then revealed what had actually happened. Ellen disclosed that Orlok, whom Thomas feared, was the creature that had been appearing in her dreams. What surprised Thomas about Ellen's statement was that Ellen confessed to having a romantic relationship with Orlok in the dream. The dream stopped after Ellen decided to marry Thomas and live a real life. Here, Ellen also became very angry because Thomas signed the contract with Orlok for a sack of gold that Orlok offered. Ellen felt that all this time Thomas only cared about his career and money, neglecting her feelings. However, Thomas defended himself, saying that he had reasons for doing this because he thought it was good for their future. Amidst the argument, suddenly Ellen started behaving strangely. Her body convulsed, her eyes bulged, and she stuck out her tongue in an unnatural way. Panicking, Thomas tried to calm Ellen, but fortunately, shortly afterward, Ellen regained consciousness. The horror continued, and it now befell Anna's 2 daughters. On that fateful night, Orlok was seen pouncing on both of them mercilessly. The death of their 2 daughters left Pedrick devastated and filled with rage. He blamed Ellen for all these tragedies. Overcome with emotion, Pedrick felt that Ellen's presence brought disaster to their family. Ellen could only weep helplessly, feeling guilty despite never wanting any of this to happen. Meanwhile, Thomas, Dr. Scher, and Professor Franz began planning something to end the curse. From past stories, they learned that Orlick could be defeated by driving an iron stake into his body. However, Pern herself was not entirely convinced of this method, dismissing it as mere legend. The following day, before leaving, Thomas met with Ellen. He promised it would soon be over. Ellen simply sighed because she knew they would not be able to confront Orlick. Courage alone was not enough to destroy him. But Ellen still prayed for Thomas's safety and asked him to promise to return safely. The departure also served as their last farewell. Dr. Scher, Franz, and Thomas began searching for Orlick's weakness at the old manor. Upon arrival, they only found Nock, who was already dying. In his critical condition, Nock managed to say that his master desperately wanted Ellen. From this, Thomas finally realized that their search at the manor was in vain, and it was revealed that all this was part of Franz's plan. Franz knew that Orlick would look for Ellen because Ellen had previously confided in him. The only way to stop Orlick's curse was for Ellen herself to offer herself willingly. Ellen had asked Franz to plan everything. Meanwhile, at home, Ellen finally surrendered and sacrificed herself by accepting Orlick's love like before. She called for Orlick, and shortly after, he appeared with long-repressed passion. Orlick savored every touch of Ellen and began to suck her blood. However, so entranced was he in Ellen's embrace, Orlick did not realize that dawn had arrived. He was trapped in this situation and became weak, unable even to escape Ellen's grasp. Ultimately, Orlick perished alongside Ellen on that bed. When Thomas returned home, it was already too late. With Ellen's sacrifice, the city of Wisbrook was freed from Orlick's curse. And here, the film finally ended. Alright guys, that's the storyline of the movie. Hopefully, what I have shared and conveyed can entertain and accompany your leisure time a little. See you in the next video. Greetings from the admin and bye-bye.